I have said for a while that $100,000 in your portfolio is the most important number that you can hit. And that is because that's when investing gets fun. But why is that the case? And how do you even get to that first $100,000? Here's my story. Here's how I got there, and here's how I will lay this path out for you to do the same if you have not reached that number. For me, it took me about 7 years, and on average, depending on what your salary is, it's gonna take you 7 to 8 years to hit that first $100,000. Here's the best thing about that. It will never take you that same amount of time again. Because of the way that compounding interest works, if it took you 8 years the first time, it'll be 7.5 or 6 the next time. From 100,000 to 200, from 200 to 300, it'll be, let's say, 6 to 3, right? That number is going to compress because you are compounding more money. And the thing is, when I invested my first $100, because that's when I started. I started as a teacher in Dallas, Texas. The starting salary for an average teacher like me when I started in 2012 was $45,000. So I'm not somebody that went fresh out of college with a computer science degree and worked at some tech firm and was getting paid $180,000 out the gate. I wish, but that was not the case for me. I had a very regular job, which I did enjoy, and I could only afford at that time to invest just $100 per month. And honestly, when you invest a small amount, it is important to do, and we've talked about that several times on this channel, but when you make 2% or 5%, you're only making like $5. You're only making $2. It doesn't feel the same as you making $2,000 in a day or $5,000 in a day because you had $1,000 to invest in the first place. So once you hit that number, that's when things get more exciting and you really start to see how fast things can move, because the stock market, which it does historically, grows anywhere between 7 to 10%. Within a year, you have 100,000 and you have 110. Right? And now you say, oh look, I only have 90,000 to go before I hit the next milestone at 200,000. And that money starts to roll up very quickly because you have such a strong base to start from to get that first 100,000 and then what comes next. But how did I get there and how can you get there? The key for me was this. So first, obviously start investing. Now for me, what I did, I primarily focused on my employer plans. So as a teacher, I was called a 403B. If you work in corporate America, that's probably a 401k. If you get a match, you should absolutely focus on that. Again, I started with $100 per month, so it wasn't a whole lot. But once I got my second job in finance, which was a pay cut, by the way, let me just quickly pause here. I went $45,000 my first 2 years in teaching, left, became a financial advisor. My salary actually went down to $35,000, and then I moved to New York. That was not the brightest financial decision for me to go from an inexpensive at the time, I know Dallas is expensive now, but at the time, go from Dallas where my rent was $900 and then leave and go to New York, and with a cheaper salary, higher taxes, and my apartment being wildly overpriced with no AC. Not the brightest move. However, I did get another job and get paid a lot more. But in either case, what I did was focus on my 401k, focus on my 403b, and once I got my second corporate job in finance, I was making, I think, close to about 50 to 55,000 that second time around, and I said, look, I'm investing 15%. And ever since then, this was about 2015, 2016, ever since then, I've kept my investments at 15% and have not lowered it. Did this make that budget tight from time to time? That answer is yes. Did this at times mean that I didn't get to go to certain concerts? I've not been to a Beyonce concert yet, or Taylor Swift. I've been to some, but I haven't been to those. But primarily, yeah, I did have to make some sacrifices. And one of the best things that I always did, or I would encourage you to do, is always work backwards. When you get that offer letter or you know what your salary, your take home is going to be, take off 15% and say, look, what else do I need to do? How much does my student loans, or are my student loans going to come out of this? And where do I need to live? And how is that going to factor into everything? Every place I've ever moved or lived, I've been on every time zone here in the US, I've always chosen to pick my rent, even my mortgage in this case, and say this is the max I'm willing to pay because I need the rest of this money to invest. I need the rest of this money to go enjoy on myself as well. So I've always done that every single time. The first thing I do every time I get a job is talk to HR, where's my 401k and how fast can I put money into it? That's always a question, and then I always bump it up to 15%. If you feel that 15% is too high, my recommendation has always been, and I've been quoted left and right everywhere, 12 to 15% is usually a good bar. If you feel like that's too much, start at 10, move up. If you feel like that's too much, start at 1 and move up. The key here is to start investing. You're not going to get $100,000 in your portfolio if you don't invest $1. You have to start somewhere. So make sure that whatever your budget is, start somewhere and start to move up. If you feel that $50 a month or whatever isn't going to add up, it absolutely will. It may take you longer to hit that benchmark, but it does add up. So do pay attention to that. So for me, from about 2012 to about 2019 is when I just scratched $100,000, and it was very brief. I will be 100% honest with you. It was brief. The reason why it was brief is because if you remember, we went right into the pandemic in 2020, and the stock market between March and April fell more than 30%. So I had $100,000 very briefly. I didn't get the chance to take a screenshot because the market fell so quickly during that time. And I was also the one person that said, hey, I'm going to move from New York and leave my job and not have a full-time income because the job market absolutely dried up at that point in time. Now, thankfully, it didn't last forever. I did pick up a job at the end, near the end of 2020 going into 2021, and guess what I did? The first thing that I did was turn right back around and say, hey, 15%, we're going right back into the market. Now, during 2020, obviously I do writing. It's not my only source of income, was my 9 to 5. Run a whole business, right? We talk about multiple streams of income here. So I was still taking that money and investing it as well. The key difference here is during that time, I did 2 things differently. Instead of investing in 401k, because I did not have it, what I did was invest in what is called an individual brokerage account. For most people, this is Robinhood. For me, it was Public. If you were on Public, you saw me invest on a regular basis. And now that account that started, let's say mid-2020, 3.5 years later, is more than $15,000 today. And that is a quote-unquote extra bucket of cash, an extra portfolio that is adding into my wealth and helping me to compound a whole lot faster. And back then, again, it was 2020. So there wasn't, a consistent 9 to 5 paycheck every 2 weeks, every month coming in. I was investing $50, $100 here and there, and that consistently started to add up. And now there's a 5-figure account that is still growing to this day. The key is starting. The key here is starting. Now, there is somebody out there, and I know who you are. I know who you are. You're watching this and you're thinking, okay, well, I've seen all these videos on TikTok. I've seen all this stuff on Twitter where it says, hey, don't invest in your 401k. Your 401k is a scam. The fees are too high. You should instead put just a little bit in there for you to get the match if you have one, and then put the rest in an index universal life insurance policy or a whole life policy because it's going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm here to tell you that 99% of that is BS. And the reason why that is the case is because the majority of these policies, not all, the majority of these policies are extremely expensive. Now, a little background for me. I was a financial advisor in New York. I managed over $140 million. I had my life insurance license. And I know for a fact that advisors get paid more on life insurance than they do on mutual funds and stocks and everything in between. Okay, that is a fact. That is a fact. They get paid more from those life insurance products. So they are incentivized in making those videos and telling you more about the benefits of life insurance, and there are some benefits, versus telling you what the fees are. If you go back and watch any of those viral videos in the past, go back and see what the fees were and how often they even talk about fees in general. They'll talk about what you'll make, but don't talk about the fees, and that actually reduces your return. So if you were to compare a 401k putting in 15% compared to the exact same amount that you would have put into a life insurance policy, yeah, they'll say that it's tax-free income and it's this and that, but again, after fees, what is tax-free income if I'm loaning myself my own money? That doesn't really help me. Is it really a benefit if I put $5,000 in the bank and then loan myself my own $5,000 and say it's tax-free income? It's not really income at all. It's just the money I already had. It didn't grow, right? So you want to be very careful of things like that. But if you want a deeper dive breakdown how some of those policies work and what the math is, you want to check out this video right here.